This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi along the Tom Bigby River called Columbus. And sometimes I write about the rest of the state. Tonight's episode is about our CVB and our Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation director, Nancy Carpenter, and her desire to have more funding from the CVB. It's titled, Nancy Needs to Hold a Bake Sale and a car wash at the Welcome Center. It's that time of year again, folks. It's time for the annual Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation to demand funding from the Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau. Yes, here they are again, a 501c3 holding their hand out yet again for $100,000 plus to solely fund their foundation yet again, with zero oversight and zero transparency of where last year's $100,000 plus went. Yes, fellow citizens of Columbus, your tax dollars were distributed blindly to the Columbus boondoggle called the Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation, sometimes referred to as the Foundation or CCHF, that closed the Columbus Welcome Center doors with no notice to the public, and more importantly, with absolutely no notice to the Visitors Bureau that funds their operation. Why? Because Nancy Carpenter, who was made director of the Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation as she was getting the boot from the Columbus Visitors Bureau, is vindictive. Let's get a little caught up on the history of the foundation. Once upon a time, Columbus had a vibrant spring tourism event called Spring Pilgrimage. It has been conducted in our small town for over 80 years and has seen thousands upon thousands of guests trooping through our town to see our antebellum homes and their gardens and enjoy our hospitality. Busloads of groups arrived for the tours, but those buses did not magically find their way to our fair city. They were courted by the predecessors of Nancy Carpenter at both the CVB and the former historic Columbus organization, and various tourism entities in the community worked together months and months in advance to inform groups of our tours, the dates, etc. And then Nancy Carpenter took over the CVB, and she canceled the CVB's membership in tourism organizations that shared information about communities like ours. Instead, she decided it was better to drop hundreds of thousands of dollars on print ads in magazines like Horizons, the United Airlines magazine. United Airlines is an airline that does not even fly to within 3 hours of Columbus. Add to that, Carpenter decided to take over the pilgrimage promotion and ticket sales. She and her now deceased husband, Carol, and daughter, Molly Jane, would not only control the sales of the tickets during pilgrimage, but would also be the only ones present to count each day's take. A complaint was filed by the Homeowners Association that the number of tickets actually sold, the number reported to local news agencies, and the number of guests that came to their homes each day did not match to the amount of money reported. A huge discussion was had about Nancy's lack of transparency and questionable bookkeeping and reporting practices. This resulted in the homeowners removing their homes from the convention bureaus and the foundations, at that time they were still connected, event partnership. In retaliation, Carpenter and the board president revoked the seat the homeowners had on the board. Carpenter ceased to court the tourists interested in attending home tours and pretty much destroyed tourism in Columbus. The Historic Homeowners Group assumed all responsibility for their pilgrimage tours and rebuilt their events since COVID, and this year had a banner year. The other group, the Preservation Society, is trying to build a program. However, their progress is still slow going, and they have yet to see any real actual growth. Perhaps with time and new direction, that will change now that Carpenter is gone from the Columbus Visitors Bureau. But the problem is that Carpenter is now across the street or across the parking lot at the Tennessee Williams Welcome Center, which she promptly closed in the middle of spring pilgrimage this year, with zero warning and zero discussion with the Visitors Bureau or the Historic Homeowners Association. No public notice except for an 8.5 by 11 type note on the door of the Tennessee Williams back in April of this year. The building is still shut and wrapped in yellow "Do Not Cross" police line tape, like it's a crime scene, which it appears to be. No one knows when the Welcome Center on Main Street will ever reopen, when the shoddy half-ass renovations will be complete, or when Carpenter herself plans to show back up to work in the building. I assume she will conveniently keep it closed until she gets more funding from somewhere to pay the salary that was not included in the previous foundation budget submitted to the CVB last fall to fund her new position. Carpenter allegedly has had her foundation board president, Brenda Willis, deliver the new proposed budget to the CVB for the upcoming budget meeting, which is the last Tuesday in August. I'm curious how much the foundation is asking this year. I'm sure it will be at least $120,000, if only to match last year's. But this year, that request should hit the CVB a little differently. Here's some reasons why. Number one, Carpenter is the CVB's former director. When Carpenter left, she illegally wiped clean all her CVB-owned devices in an effort to destroy all her emails, files, etc. on her laptop, desktop, iPad, and telephone. All content and all devices were the property of the CVB and not her personal property. Additionally, the CVB is a government entity and bound by the rules and laws that govern record retention for open records laws, both state and federal. Fortunately, Exceed Technologies was able to restore most of the lost data, including over 200,000 emails that Carpenter sent between 2019 and 1 April 2024. 2. Carpenter closed the Welcome Center in the middle of the annual spring pilgrimage without any notice to the Columbus Visitors Bureau, her partner agency, or the community at large. Her new board at the foundation were unaware that she had failed to notify anyone of the closure or that she planned to close down in the middle of the busiest month of tourism in Columbus for her renovations. 3. There is absolutely no oversight of how taxpayer dollar is spent or accounted for at the foundation. The foundation is a 501c3 and refuses to be transparent in their spending. They only are required to make tax returns open to the public. However, based on what is available at the Secretary of State's page, they have not filed anything timely. 2021 tax returns are the most recent filings available, and those are incomplete and have a tiny caveat that states at the bottom, for the full return, contact TE Lot. The lack of transparency is a serious issue. Number 4, the ethical questions of a nonprofit foundation using government funds as their sole source of funding is seriously concerning. What other 501c3 in Columbus relies solely on 2% tax dollar grant to fund their entire operational budget to the tune of $100,000 plus? How is this even allowed? And if it is allowed, how can that amount of money be given to a nonprofit and not require reimbursement type payouts based on deliverables, matching grants, in-kind donations, and proof of work invoices? I have never seen a grant delivered so generously without invoices, quarterly reports, grant product inspection or audits, or some accountability tool, especially for this amount of money that is only for maintaining a building and not developing programs or events, etc. The foundation is not hosting any cultural events and does not appear to have any on its future horizon. It would appear the foundation is merely for the upkeep of the building and paying the docents that run the visitor center at this point. Clearly, a director is not needed, nor is a foundation. The foundation itself should be disbanded. The building should be turned back over to the CVB to be maintained, and the docents retained and paid via the CVB. Call the CVB and tell them they need to cease all funding of the Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation. They should take back the building and quit spending unnecessary monies on a vanity organization that pretends to do cultural events that are non-existent. The foundation board should disband and dissolve their 501c3. Nancy Carpenter should be shown the door and removed from any and all access to publicly funded spaces. The building should be returned to the CVB to be the Welcome Center again. Or, if Carpenter really wants to keep the foundation, her board, and her new job, the CVB could just give her a $15,000 community grant like they do for Artesia Days, and like everyone else who has to qualify to get a community grant. And then Carpenter should be told to go out and write grants and fundraise to fund her foundation nonprofit like every other nonprofit has to do. She could even hold a bake sale on that sinking front porch of the Tennessee Williams building, or maybe host a car wash with her working board members in the parking lot out back. I want to thank you for coming on my podcast, The Tom Bigby Tales. Until next time. And don't forget to contact the CVB and tell them, do not fund the foundation this year.